with all the big calls on all the big races. I'm delighted to say it's time for another What a Shout, your flagship weekend feature show here at the Racing Post. We are in the capital on Friday morning. A happy weekend to you all. Dave Orton back in the hot seat for what promises to be another classic Group 1 weekend. We've got the Eclipse, of course, at Sandown. We'll be previewing races at Haydock as well. But before we go into that, who is on the panel? Now, I'm delighted to say that we are going up in the world. It's only taken a year and a half. But we've got a guest back in the studio for you. We've been promising it for a while. And finally, we've got some nobility, because I'm delighted to say our big guest this week, Juddmonte Supremo Racing Manager, Lord Teddy Grimthorpe, joins us. Teddy, thanks for coming in.
Peter, great to be here.
Well, you say
Dave.
that. Yeah, remember. He got the name wrong, which is marvellous. We've only been given him a running order for this. This has been on the show, this has been on the cards for weeks. This.
I do know why. Do you know why that came? Because there's an Australian called Peter Orton, and I thought,
don't start labelling me with them. I mean, a lot of people like to banish me down there. But of course, you say you're delighted to be here, Teddy, but you walked into the office and I said, welcome to the Racing Post office. I said, it's usually bustling, but of course, because this pandemic, there's no one in here. And you went, I've avoided all the people I've been terrified of all these years. But it's great to have you on. 2020, obviously, huge year for you. We'll get into that. Well, everything, of course, all the memories, but what comes next, of course, the sad passing of Prince Khalid, Abdullah as well, of course. Chris Cook, front runner, as we now call him, comes back into the studio.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me back.
You've played no small part in getting Teddy onto the show as well.
Oh, a very small part, I should think. I made one phone call.
But it was the phone call. We should say, you're not, well, we won't go into it too much, but this is something in a feather of What a Shout's cap, let's put it that way. But your last appearance here, of course, was a classic weekend. It was an Oaks winning nap.
Yes, get in, good old Snowfall. Thank you for remembering that tip, by the way, instead of all the other ones.
We must never undersell ourselves.
I remember we sat here and talked about how it was going to be fast ground and all the fast ground horses that were going to run really well at Epsom. And then we went out the studio right after, and Paul Keeley looks out the window and goes, it's absolutely tipping down.
Yeah, and to let you into some little-known secrets of the trade, Chris emailed and he went, perhaps we should sort of edit out all my things. Of course, Snowfall went and hosed up, so there's a tip for you there, Chris. Always let it ride.
Stand by your guns. Yeah.
Talking of let it ride, shall we saddle up with our sponsors, Bet365? And again, Pat Cooney joins us. Pat, welcome.
Yes, glad to be on the show, and I'm actually having a day at the races tomorrow. Bet365 sponsor at Haydock Park, Lancashire Oaks, Old Newton Cup and so forth, so really looking forward to a day out. Come up and say hello to me.
Brilliant. There you go. You have been warned. Pat is back on track. Let's have a look at exactly what we have got coming up for you then. Okay, we'll be giving you a hot topic. All about the whip. Let's get the panel's view on this. It's rearing its head again. We'll be looking at the racing clues, just a small matter of the Irish Derby to go through last weekend. Then we'll be giving you tips, of course, on our views on the big races this weekend. As Pat mentioned, Lancashire Oaks, etc. up at Haydock. We've also got the Eclipse. Yes, the Eclipse. What do you make of that on the small field down at Sandown? Big calls and those all-important weekend winners. Right then, before we go into all the topics, of course, it would be aghast of us not to talk to Teddy, of course, about what a year it's been. 2021, of course, started sadly, Teddy, with the passing of the late, great Prince Khalid Abdullah, the doyen of the owner breeding game, and colours that everyone, all our viewers, will have got so many memories about.
Yes, it was very, very sad. I think Prince Khalid was truly a remarkable man in so many ways. Of course, the public, he was a very private person, so I don't think people really got to know him. Obviously, anyone who was close to him or spent time with him, it took a while. It took a while to get what he was about, what he liked, what interested him, and what, most importantly, he wanted done. And he had very clear ideas on all subjects, horses, as well as a lot of other things. So he was extraordinary like that, and of course, for 22 years, speaking to him nearly every day of the week, it was just a huge honour.
Absolutely, Chris. Absolutely an aloof character. I suppose you got closer than most at times at the racecourse, did you, once or twice?
To Khalid Abdullah, I don't think I ever spoke to him directly, but it would be his colours are, more or less, my time in racing. They were in every big race on the flat, and back to when I was wee small. I've got sort of great memories. Well, Dancing Brave, would be the one at the beginning, but there have been so many over the years.
He is the one at the
contribution that he's
beginning,
made is just
Teddy, isn't he? He's the one that, say, someone like me got into racing in the early 2000s. The legend of Dancing Brave, for example.
Yeah.
Starkey, Pattering, all that sort of thing, the Arcs, and of course the Eclipse this weekend. The Eclipse 3 times, of course.
Yep.
So you began in 99.
99, yeah.
99. And everyone knows you as Lord Teddy Grimthorpe, of course, but of course that was not your original name. You are actually a cousin of Rafe, aren't you, Rafe Beckett?
Well, funnily enough, we were joking the other day, and I said when he first started training, he was a distant cousin, and then when he started training a few winners, he became a first cousin. When he started training a classic winner, group winners, he became my son, and then eventually
He became Peter.
my brother. He became my brother, but he is a first cousin, yeah.
What a pleasure this is then. Let's go down memory lane, shall we? Let's enjoy it. We've got a graphic coming up on screen. And this is in your tenure, Teddy, that we're on the screen. Our viewers will now be seeing the top horses that Juddmonte have had under your reign, if you like, by Racing Post Racing. Now, we know that Frankel is at the top, of course, but there's Observatory there, Kingman, of course. And we had to shorten down the list for graphic reasons, but we could have gone on. I don't think anyone will think that I'm trying to curry favour by saying that. It is the stuff of dreams, Chris, isn't it?
Absolutely. Even just you saying Observatory, he's one that people, maybe would be in danger of forgetting. But, he had that great race against Giants Causeway, was it, in the QE2?
In the QE2,
yeah. So many memorable races like that over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are horses that drop off the radar. And I said to you, look, and I'm going to get this out of the way, viewers, and get your comments in. Who was your favourite? Who was your absolute top? And maybe not the obvious, not the Frankels of this world, the top Juddmonte Silks. Horses like Banks Hill, who to you I assume mean absolutely everything. But to me, you sort of have to, oh God, do you remember Banks Hill?
Yeah, no, I mean, she was very, very special. She was a bit unlucky to get beaten in the French Guineas, but she redeemed herself at Royal Ascot and bursting through in the coronation. And then, of course, Prince Khalid gave Prince Khalid his first Breeders' Cup winner.
Yes.
Which we were 0 for 35 at that stage, so it was not a good batting average.
No, indeed not. So a really emotional day, and I imagine you celebrated properly, did you?
Well, we pretty much did, actually. It was at Belmont, and her sister Intercontinental did the same thing, I think, 4 years later, which was pretty amazing. But it was a spectacular day.
Frankel, we've got to go there, haven't we? It'd be silly of us not to. Of course, you can read about Frankel as much as you like, but the highest rated horse in history. Chris, I'll come to you first before we get a little bit of the insight. Again, feel rather privileged to be around in this era, don't we? See the stars, and then along came Frankel, which was tearing up everything that we'd ever seen before.
I mean, that was just a special story for all sorts of reasons, but I mean, particularly because of the involvement of Sir Henry Cecil, who'd had that career dip and then was coming back, and then suddenly it was, in his stable he had this best horse he'd ever trained. And it became so important to all sorts of people, fans of racing, that this horse kept his unbeaten record, and of course he stayed in training so much longer than everyone expected to begin with. And even we used to, in the Guardian in those days, we did little gallops reports, and I remember we were writing about him before he ever ran, saying there's this horse in Newmarket everyone seems to really like. And I remember his first maiden was, his maiden was that race against Nathaniel with...
Colour Vision was there, the Gold Cup winner.
Just an amazing field to look back on.
Yeah.
And you sort of took it for granted that he was going to win, and you didn't really know there was going to be a sort of subsequent King George Eclipse winner chasing him home in second place.
The questions that I've got for you, Teddy, that I'm really interested in, I'm hoping that our viewers will be as well. The naming of Frankel, obviously, after Bobby Frankel, the great American trainer who sadly died in 2009 of leukemia. Frankel was named in 2008, so there was obviously a poignancy there. At what point did was the name saved, for example, or was it something that Prince Khalid just wanted to do?
The Prince Khalid took a sort of huge interest in naming his horses, and what used to happen was that we'd give him suggestions of names, and he would like some or not, and he would reject most of them. Said no, we've got to get better names, and usually the last yearling to be named was what he thought was his best yearling. And so Frankel was named, actually. Bobby died, Frankel was born in 2008, and Bobby died in November 2009 when he was a yearling, and he eventually got officially named in probably April or March of his 2-year-old career, when he was already at Henry's. But certainly he'd never done anything, and no, we didn't reserve any names. And so when it came to it, I think that people subsequently have think, why don't you name a horse Cecil? That the odds of getting that right are so
it's quite
ridiculous. I mean, it really is. Of all the things that can go wrong, so it would have been unfair pressure to call a horse Cecil, and it really would have been.
I didn't have quite the same ring, of course, but that's still perhaps an offer in the offing.
Yeah, but you know, but that may or not still be available. But in terms of when Prince Khalid said Frankel, he just said a very, very quiet way, just said, and there it was. And of course, it was a good name because it brought more stories together. And if you thought the story of the horse was good, the story of Bobby Frankel was unbelievable, and the Henry Cecil's story was an alignment of stars.
There was a temptation to go for the Arc, which never happened. He never travelled. What were the pressures on you at that point? Were you feeling it, or was it always no? We know the ball game. Stick to it.
I think the fantastic thing about Henry is that we had. He had a very clear idea what he wanted to do with the horse. It wasn't, would you like to do this, or would you? And he said, this is what I think we should do. And Prince Khalid was consulted at every stage, but in terms of what we did talk about the Derby originally. There's a lot because he sired a Derby winner and now an Irish Derby winner. There's a lot to be said. Well, why didn't Frankel go to the Derby? And certainly before the Guineas, I was very much in the camp of going to the Derby. He was Galileo, but his dam was fast. But really, the way he won the Guineas. And if you read the write-up on Tudor Minstrel in Racehorses of 1947, it gave you heebie-jeebies, and for almost the same reasons. But Henry didn't want to go to the Derby, and it wouldn't have been right for him at that stage of his development. It would have been too much, probably. I always say he would have been effective from 5 furlongs to 1.5 miles, no problem, because he just had that extraordinary class. But with the Arc, and again, I said to Henry, he didn't even put him in, and I said, surely, what if he bolts up at York, and we're going to want to go to the Arc, aren't we? And he said, no, we're going to go to Ascot. And I went, okay. And Prince Khalid went with it. I mean, he was interested, and we discussed it a lot. But actually, as it turned out, it was bottomless at Ascot on his last day in the Champion Stakes. But it was even more bottomless at Longchamp that year. So, which was won by, I think, Plumania beat Old Fev that year.
That was deep, wasn't it?
And it would have been a very unfair thing to ask a horse to do first time over. I'm sure good going, and Henry would have, if he'd stayed in training as a 5-year-old, Henry probably would, the Arc would have had to be in the aim. But I think it was all, and also you were taking on much better horses in the Champion Stakes than you were in the Arc that particular year anyway. So it wasn't like it was an avoiding thing. He was taking on Nathaniel and Sirius des Eggs.
It was the purists that were shouting for it, of course, wasn't it?
And of course, everybody wants to see a good horse do more, whatever it is, no matter where you go, everybody. But that, I think, you know, Prince Khalid's mantra was always that we must do the best for the horse. What is the best for the horse? And Henry wanted to show him in the best light. He had never any qualms about whether he'd win or not, I don't think. But I think he wanted to, like, you know, the owner and trainer wanted wanted to see him at his best.
Extremely revealing, Chris, isn't it? Absolutely. And that's why we'll never be a Premiership racing manager. Okay, you can see the calm nature of Teddy coming off already and batting off these suggestions. We're not going to the Arc. He's not even in the Arc. But also mentioning Tudor Minstrel in 1947. We never stood a chance, man. At all. So from one genius to another. Pat Cooney, you've got a question for Teddy.
Yeah, Teddy, it's just something I've always been wondering about. Juddmonte have had horses with so many incredible trainers over the years, the likes of Andre Fabre, Dermot Weld, Mr. Gosden, Stout, Henry Cecil. How was it ever decided who would train which particular horse? Because, of course, at this stage, they've never run, they've never galloped. I was just wondering, could, for example, Frankel have ended up with Andre Fabre, Dermot Weld or whoever? How were the horses decided they're going to go to such and such a trainer?
The process was quite a long and involved one. And it basically started. Prince Khalid would see the yearlings himself, both in America and in Europe, on the farm. So he just to really give him the sort of background he needed, and then between that. We usually about after we'd come back from the Breeders' Cup, we'd put a sort of package together for him with notes, ratings, all veterinary staff, everything on all the yearlings. So he had a good idea of what there was, and he would then take it away and allocate them as he so wished.
So did Roger ever come up and go, hang on a minute, that was...
But the thing is, you see, because if you did it, I know what you mean, and a lot of families, trainers do get allocated the same families and everything, but on that margin, for instance, Jeremy Tree or Beckhampton would have got practically everything, or Pulborough and Guy Harwood and Amanda would have got everything. So obviously you have to spread. Prince Khalid wanted to have what he considered his best horses with where he thought his best trainers were at that time, and that's no denigration to Roger, because, for instance, he trained Cityscape and Barry Hills had Tantina. So what might suit a particular trainer? I think that was a fantastic thing about Frankel and Henry is that they just suited each other so well as well in every way. I always said neither would have been the same without the other.
It's the greatest game of all, isn't it? Right then, after all that, we've got to look at this week's hot topic, and it is the whip is rearing its head, isn't it? Of course, again, I'm going to come straight to you, Chris, because your front runner email, which we all enjoy so much every morning, I think twice this week, this morning, on Friday morning in particular, has mentioned the whip. You've been on the show before and said, of course, about different jurisdictions. There was Monmouth Park, wasn't there, in America, where they trialled without. Of course, this is something that the BHA have been looking at since 2018, but now that it's actually in due process, I believe, isn't it?
It's a very polite way of saying, Chris, for goodness sake, think of something new to write about. This has been coming a very long time. It was the end of 2018 when Nick Rust, who was chief executive of the BHA at the time, gave an interview to the BBC sort of signalling that I think he said that sort of stiffer penalties for whip infractions were coming down the pipes. And it was a little bit previous and then everything got put on hold. But finally we're here with an actual defined consultation. It's open to everybody. There's a link that's out in the public domain where everybody who follows the game can go on there and give their own views about what they think of the rules so far and what they think should happen next. It's always a hot topic. I mean, I remember the last time the rules were changed, which was 2011, so it's 10 years ago. Huge controversy at that time. Everyone can remember Christophe Soumillon getting fined. I think all of his prize money that he was going to win on Champions Day, wasn't it? And asking for Nick Luck for the taxi fare to Heathrow. And so the rules were sort of changed fairly hastily after that. But we've never really stopped talking about the whole subject since then. And I think what the BHA would very much like to do now is put in place some kind of framework that you can get a broad consensus is the right way to go, and hopefully we can then put that to one side and talk about horse racing for the next 10 years.
Yes, fine, right. And we're expecting something, a decision early next year, aren't we? And then by next spring, we have to expect some sort of implementation. Something's going to change, right?
I would think there's basically no chance they're going to take this amount of time and spend this amount of money to come up with the same rules we already have. So yes, there will be a change of some kind.
When he puts it like that, it's almost odds on, isn't it? Absolutely. Teddy, what's your perception on this? Do you think that people are, as the world changes and the public perception is everything now for racing, isn't it? We've seen a couple of trainers come out this week who've had a little look at what's maybe going on behind the scenes, and they've tried to be positive about it.
Yeah, I think that there are several often sort of conflicting factors in this. Obviously, perception is one thing. Animal welfare is another, and the other thing is, if you make these rules, and let's face it, they are only very important in Cheltenham Gold Cup, the Grand National, the Guineas, the Derby, the Stallion, the Group 1 races, the stallion making races, where there's so much involved, and so therefore the win at all costs, if you like, or at an extra cost, is going to be very difficult to write within a set of rules unless you give these rules some teeth.
And tiring horses is something, Chris, you've also mentioned this week, isn't it? And towards the end of a race is where it seems to be a little bit open for conjecture, I'd imagine.
Well, I mean, because of course that's where the whip is used, and that's the point at which the horses are starting to feel the fatigue. So my point is the rules as they're enforced just now, stewards always seem to respond with surprise when the jockey picks up the whip over here and then the horse goes in that direction. If there's another horse right there that gets interfered with, you might not even get a suspension on the grounds that you couldn't possibly have reacted quickly enough. So my point would be, since we're revising the rules, there is a crossover point between the whip rules and the interference rules. Can we write in there an acknowledgement that there is a risk? You're taking a risk. If you raise your whip over here, that the horse may go that way, you know perfectly well that could happen. So if it does happen and you wipe out the horse that's next to you, I think it's fair game for you to be punished as though you've taken a risk with someone else's
That's
safety.
frustrating for everyone in racing, I think, isn't it? Punters can't stand it. There are some jockeys who've made it a fine art form towards the end of a race, that just putting horses off their run.
You can't see what's in their head, but
that's how it comes across. Pat, let's give you the final word on this. Anything to add?
Well, not really. I'm just pleased that they're taking their time, really. I see it's the survey's 10 weeks. The final decision is in January 22, and then the implementation will be April the 30th. So we're doing away with the knee-jerk reactions to it, aren't we? And I think, as Chris has alluded to, they're not going to go through all this process and saying, do you know what, we're fine as we are. I just think that the penalties will be stiffer for jockeys, and maybe that's probably the fairest way to go. But there's some good people on the board, and they're going to take their time. And I think that's a very important thing.
So if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook or Twitter, hashtag What a Shout, let us know. What would you do? Racing clues then. Let's whistle through these. Just another derby, wasn't it? Of course, Hurricane Lane and the Lone Eagle, of course. The name nearly escaped me there. You obviously Peter Eagle. But we saw at the Curragh, of course, great card, wasn't it, on the Saturday? Fans let back in finally over there. It was a really good celebratory experience. And Godolphin won, Hurricane Lane. Third, of course, Adayar. Big boost for him, I suppose, at Epsom, wasn't it? Lone Eagle, Frankie taking the ride. Probably could have taken one or two others. And the horse that we always thought too came clear. Teddy, what did you make of the race?
I thought it was fascinating. I personally thought that Hurricane Lane would win, mainly because I thought he'd win the Epsom Derby, yes. And he lost two shoes on Tattenham Corner, and you saw him change his action significantly as he was trying to negotiate the hill and the turn, and I thought that on that ground, I think it makes a significant difference. And of course, but the winner found a fantastic turn of foot. So I always thought if he's come out of it all right, and the fact that they're going straight to the Curragh would say that, I would think that he was there. But Frankie nearly stole it.
Two super smart horses, Chris. I think we can agree on that. Martin Mead tends to find one every year, doesn't he? He really does.
Yes, he's done well, and that must have been heartbreaking for him because he looked home for all money, didn't he? That being said, Hurricane Lane is very deserving, very likeable horse. What you would love really would be a rematch with him and Adayar. I mean, I guess it would have to be a very sporting decision by connections, wouldn't it? But at a more conventional track, it would be up in the air, I think, as to which way it might go.
Yes, and let's bring Pat in here, because all of a sudden anti-post markets took a real shake after Adyar won the Derby. Everyone was saying, will he go King George? It looks like he's going to take on Love, the great filly from Ballydoyle. But the St Ledger was mentioned. Of course, the strongest stayer usually wins at the Curragh. That's the old adage, isn't it? Do we expect him and Lone Eagle to be turning up at the Town Moor in September, Pat?
Well, it looks like the St Ledger is going to be an absolute red-hot race, doesn't it? Adair's probably going to go to Ascot for the King George, as you say. Were he to win that, I guess he'll stay at 1.5 miles. But, you know, Hurricane Lane, Adair, they head the market for the St Ledger. Two very, very high-class horses. Throw in Lone Eagle. I think he's off to France over 1.5 miles next. But wouldn't you look at him as a likely Ledger win? I mean, he won over 10 furlongs as a juvenile, so he'll stay. And there's others in the equation, aren't there? Alan Kerr, you've got Sir Lamarat, Wordsworth. And who knows what High Definition is going to be up to. Very disappointing at the Curragh. Okay, he did stumble after a furlong. He was eased when beaten. Again, we're going to have to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, well, yes, we'll see him again. Maybe he'll rock up in the St Ledger and show what he's really worth. But the St Ledger looks like being a very, very good race to win this year.
There's lots of these races coming up. Of course, next weekend, the July Cup, if they all turn up, it's ignited the flat season. Talking of the flat season, what a feather in the cap it was for Dave Loughnane in the Railway Stakes. The preceding race, of course, to the Irish Derby. Go Bears Go. Teddy, I know you watched that. He just missed out in the Norfolk, didn't he? He got first run on what looks like a good horse with Castle Star of the Stacks.
Yeah, I mean, he looks a pretty smart horse. He's coming, he's improved, the curve is going upwards, which is always what you want, especially with 2-year-olds this time of year but he looked pretty smart, didn't he?
You think of the Railway Stakes, don't you? You think of Siskin, don't you? A horse that we've only got so much time on this show. Yeah. But that was a bugbear of mine, Siskin. I never quite got him right. I thought he'd win the Sussex, and it turned out to be the race of the season last year.
It did. I mean, Jer was always his progression was as planned. It's what Jer didn't want to take him to the Coventry. He said, let's aim. The main aim is the Phoenix, and then so to get him there. That's the right way to do it, and so it proved. And he won the Railway with plenty in hand, really, and went on to win the Phoenix. And of course, he sort of blotted his copybook a little bit in the middle part when for some reason he just I've looked at it about 100 times and I still can't work out. He's the most laid-back horse, and he flipped in the stalls, which was so contrary to his character. I mean, he was like a sheep in the box. So.
It became a bit of a thing. It's amazing how it can go, isn't it? So Go Bears Go. The Phoenix is the natural progression, isn't it? And I think that so. Dave afterwards said that great win for the trainer, of course, and Ammo Racing, who've really arrived on the scene a bit this year, haven't they?
And that was like my main takeaway from that race was it's just pleasing to see. You know, some other people, you know, not the sort of big 2 or 3 dominant powers, win a decent race like that and you know, get a bit of money to invest in the game. Because the problem you're always bumping up against, and I think it shows up to some extent in the Eclipse, is that, you know, the equine talent is more and more concentrated. And one understands why it happens, but part of the effect is that, you know, trainers don't want to run their good horses against each other.
Absolutely not. We must, of course, it would be remiss of us not to mention Logician, of course, who met defeat again. I don't want to... He looks like your former St Ledger winner, of course, Teddy. He looks like he's lost that bit of pace, doesn't he? And John Gosden, after the Archer Stakes, of course, he got done by Outbox, didn't he? Who just sprinted away from him at the end. I think everyone thought he was coming there to win the race. Maybe the ground wasn't ideal, but we're starting to make a few excuses. Of course, it's a miracle he is back racing, isn't it? And John Gosden's trainer said after the race, maybe retirement will beckon now. But so he looked to me like he might want to step up and trip again.
I think he is the most gorgeous-looking horse. I mean, you know, he's Frankel, and but he's got fantastic depth. But they did a wonderful job at NEH to save his life. I mean, his peritonitis was incredibly serious, and I fear that may have taken a gear away from him. He's been in good form, and he trained as far as obviously I left after Royal Ascot, so I don't know what he was doing afterwards, but everything I saw before said he looked like he was in the right area, and John wouldn't have run him unless he'd been 100% happy. So.
At the start of the season, was it discussed that he could move up in because he is a public horse, every time he runs.
Yeah, I mean he's in the Goodwood Cup, so that may or may not be an option for the team. I truly don't know, but the calibre he showed as a 3-year-old. Sometimes it's just hard to get that all back, especially when he had that rarely serious setback. But his attributes are going to be looked for at stud most definitely.
Yeah, you get the feeling that's what it's all about. But people will want to hear about him, Chris, because he is that sort of horse. He's always going to be favourite when he turns up, or pretty much, isn't it?
Well, I don't know about that necessarily. I was just going to say it was a fine ride by Holly to beat him that day. And yeah, I'd certainly be prepared to give him another chance. I mean, a horse that's come back from what he's been through, you give him a few more chances to show that, in fact, he can recover his own old form possibly at some stage.
Okay, there were the racing clues then. The Irish Derby, we think it was a good race. Let's get into it, shall we? The weekend action. First of the big race previews is the 150 Coral Charge, 5 furlongs at Sandown. Cavalry stuff, isn't it? Pat Cooney, who's been hot in this market? I guess the weather, we all thought it was going to be proper testing ground, but we're looking at the forecast again, those pesky forecasters. It might be changing for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 10 runners in the race. The market's headed by Arecibo of Robert Cowell, Jamie Spencer. That one's in 7. Came from the dark in 9. The draw is always important at Sandown, of course, on the straight course. Tricky race, this one. There's lots of love around for Lazuli and Keep Busy. For my sins, I'm a Stone of Destiny fan. I have a feeling I'm going to say this for his entire career. But when Keep Busy was 5th at Royal Ascot, Stone of Destiny was undeniably unlucky, only about a length or so behind him. I feel he's going to be renamed the unlucky Stone of Destiny by the end of his career. But he's got Asheen Murphy up, stall 3, a daring ride from Asheen, and I think he's a value bet. He's the sort of horse that the punters latch onto, the tipping lines normally go for as well. Because we look at his defeats and go, with a clear he would have won. Maybe he wouldn't, but visually, you always mark him down as, I better put him in my notebook. He's been in it about 10 times, but so maybe number 11 comes up. But I think he's value, put it that way.
Oh, well, Oshie Murphy would certainly be a big plus on him. He is one of those, Chris, isn't he? He's one of those. I mean, look, they become your friends, these type of project horses, don't they? But I've blocked him, if you like. He is not on my radar anymore, and I thought the ground might be against him slightly. But I must admit, I thought this is the kind of race that maybe he would like. Who's Chris going for?
Well, I was sort of looking at the way the race is going to be run. I was thinking Italis Bay might get an uncontested lead. Maybe
that's a forecast for him.
Quite a few sort of hold-up types in there. I mean, the market's got to have overreacted, hasn't it, to Arecibo and the King's Stand, where I think, was it Jamie on him for the first time that day? And you can so see it. He's, some of the others are scrubbing away, and he's still last and kind of hacking along. And he came through real strong at the end there to be second. But
what's actually under the bonnet?
Well, but it was a pace meltdown, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, the ones in front, they went a mad pace that day, and unless that happens again on Saturday, I think he might be up against it. So Italis Bay to go off in front and just stay there for me, about sort of 15-2. Because Scurry Stakes winners have quite a good recent record coming on into this one.
Let's do 3-year-olds, actually.
3-year-olds, 7 out of the last 10 3-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly.
3 out of the last 6 Scurry Stakes winners, so he'll do for me.
Yeah, Teddy, I can see you've got extensive notes here.
Huge notes. I'm going contrary to all the clever advice. I'm going for, well, I thought it was going to be soft or pretty bottomless ground, and it probably won't be. But I'm going for Ainsdale, who actually ran his best ever race probably at Newcastle the other day, and he looks to be going the right way. He's Mason, and they seem to love the soft. He's drawn 10, of course, which is probably not going to help him a lot. But as an outsider, I think he'd be value there.
Pat mentioned the draw. I think certainly the ground can be a bit of a leveller these days at Sandown. Obviously, it's usually lower the better, near the fence or whatever. And typically, I've gone for stall 1. Keep Busy, who is like her Damn Look Busy, who you might remember was just so tough and ran every other week. If she comes back to that Phoenix form, I think, at the Curragh, she'll be very hard to beat. Of course, she turns up quickly. Ryan Rise, because he's got the table link, of course. I see this stiff finish being right in her favour. I would have liked a bit more rain on the horizon, but around about 6-1, she'll do for me. It's that sort of race, guys, isn't it? You're not going to go napping in this, I don't think, are we?
Definitely not.
Definitely no naps in the Coral Charge. Let's go up to Haydock then. It's 2:40. It is the Group 2 Lancashire Oaks. And big day for you, Pat. You're going to be there. Who are you going to be giving the prize to?
I like to think it'll be Kirsten Rousing and Sir Mark Prescott, really, with Alpinista, who is our current 9-4 favourite as we speak at the moment. A real high-class race, this, I think most of these are rated 100 or more, so we're delighted with it. And on the recent past winners, most of these have been very backable. I don't think they're much bigger than a 4-1 typically wins this, so the form holds up well. Alpinista is a real progressive mare, 4 years old now, won well enough on her reappearance. I think it's quite telling. She was entered in the Coronation Cup, a Group 1 at Epsom on Oaks Day. She was a non-runner on the day. What reason was, I don't know. Perhaps because of the soft ground. But there's Sir Mark Prescott entering a mare in a Group 1 race. And this is a Group 2 race. So he clearly thought she was going to be more than capable of beating the Colts in that day at Epsom. She's up against her own gender this time around. So it's all in place, isn't it, for a real, real big run. But there's a horse, Dubai Fountain, who has been a well-backed horse, in the Epsom Oaks and at Royal Ascot last time. The ball maybe didn't bounce away in either of those races. She's perhaps better judged on a win round Chester. She's in the equation. Mystery Angel, we can never really write off. She's holding her form extremely well. And there's some real progressive types in the race, isn't there? Andrew Baldwin as a runner. Henry Candy runs La Lune. And they've all got bits and pieces to find on official ratings. But they're more than capable of stepping up. But if you're going on what you've seen thus far, Alpinista is definitely the one to beat.
Yeah, been very patient, Sir Mark, with Alpinista and Kirsty Rousing's operation. There's been 3 of them all year in those colours that have been entered in the same races. Oriental Mystique, Albaflora was the other one, and they've been sort of splitting them up, obviously.
Yeah.
On a line through Oriental Mystique, Dave Simcock's horse, who was beaten by La Luna last time. Cabaletta comes into this for me, and this is, unlike good old Stone of Destiny, this is a project I'm still with. Cabaletta. I think she won't mind the ground, and I think Roger Varian will have a third up peak run. So at a price, she'll do for me.
What are you expecting the ground to be?
I think there is rain at Haydock, unlike Sandown. I had a look this morning. I saw lightning and everything. Yeah. So, we can never trust it, really. I think it will be on the soft side, which will suit her.
I mean, she definitely got a big race in her, but I'd much rather see her on fast ground, I must say. She's a sort of strong traveller, and then with the blinkers on.
She won on her debut on heavy, and everyone thought, right, this is it. and then I don't think they quite knew, but it's certainly not an inconvenience for her like it might be some of the others. Chris, were you with the favourite, or?
I mean, it's easy to like the favourite, but I think she's real short against, a few horses, as Pat says, that could improve. So, I mean, my instinct would be to try and find one that is going to improve. I thought Barani Star was interesting from Peter Chappell Hyam Yard. Nice listed win at Ayr the other day, finished strongly, I think. Been lightly raced and more to offer. I mean, she won at Haydock last summer, I think only off a mark of 71 and some handicap, and you wouldn't be thinking, Group 2 on the horizon at that stage. But she's progressing, and you wouldn't know where the top of her ability is at this stage. When she won the other day, I think that was the yard's first winner since July.
It was.
So, there's more to come, I think.
Yeah, and another filly that's been patiently handled. Teddy, who wins the Lancashire Oaks?
Well, I've gone for Tribal Craft, who won the Bronte at York. So obviously that's, Dante forms come good. Yeah. I think that this is wide open. These are some pretty smart fillies all round in this race, and I just think that maybe she can be a bit progressive. Master Craftsman, same as your Cabaletta, but
won't mind the ground.
Won't mind the ground. I think if it is soft, that would help.
And there you go, a range of opinions then in the Lancashire Oaks. So, if you'd like to sign up to our sponsors Bet365 on Eclipse Weekend, you can do so with a referral code. Just type in SHOUT365 on entering. That's a minimum £5 deposit for up to £100 bet credits. Terms and conditions apply. Big call time then. If you don't mind, I'm going to get off the mark with a bit of a gripe. Having become more versed at helping out with the in-running comments, which is a bit of an art, I have to say, and it gives you a great insight into how to read a race, and something that I've always known about, but as I'm 20 years at a racing post, I'm finally starting to get to this, but there's something that's starting to gripe me, and it's been bubbling away with me for a few years, and it's probably the cameramen that need to listen to this, and the racecourses. seeing where each furlong pole is an absolute nightmare. You have to, pushed along 4 furlongs out. Well, is it when it's on a bend and things like this? Most of the courses that I watch these days, apart from the second last and the final furlong, you have no idea at what stage in the race it is. Now, okay, of course we see on the TV it's down there somewhere, but no one's really watching that when they've got an interest in a race, are they? How fast are they going? What pace are they going? Is it fast or slow? Not really. That's something for after, isn't it? It's a plea, really, to the racecourses. In America, of course, it's all 200 metres. In Dubai, Australia, they're obsessed with it. I don't want us to go that far, Chris, but I do think we need to do something about it. Let's update and modernise slightly, please.
Modernising, I'm all in favour of modernising horse racing, and the sectionalistas will be right behind you, all 12 of them. So Simon Rowlands is sort of standing up and saying, yes.
Well, that'll be the first time, let me tell you. But no, but I just think it's something that we need to do. Just mark them a bit better. I know they are there, but the cameras, they don't show it going around the bends and stuff like that. I find it quite annoying.
Quite right.
And I think that the younger punters and all that sort of thing would like that. OK, let's go to Pat. I know you've got a big call.
Yeah, I just was reading the sad death of the Great Eratzi at the age of 32. And he made his mark in history when he won the Breeders' Cup, didn't he? Just go on YouTube. If you've not seen him at all, do that again. He won it in 1991. To this day, it remains the most dazzling performance ever seen on a racecourse, in my opinion, in the world. And I hope I'm not playing upset the guest time, but I honestly think he would have beaten Frankel that day. But it didn't work out subsequently for him. But that memory of him winning on the Breeders' Cup, and he was a fine horse in France prior to that, of course. He was an exceptional racehorse, and it was a thrill to be able to watch him run when he won that day. And, of course, you can just go on YouTube. And if you just want to watch a race and have a big smile on your face, just watch what he did that day. It was an amazing performance.
Pat playing upset the guest. Usually they do it. They're on Skype. They've been for the last year, and it's not been such much of an issue. But at the moment, but Teddy, you were actually there that night.
I was there because we went because and I was involved. I bought Showbrook as a yearling for Tony Budge with Richard Hannon, and we all went out there with Tony Murray, his racing manager, and we thought it would be a clever idea to put a pair of blinkers, but they were with sort of perspex over the eyes, which we thought would be a brilliant idea for him to get over the dirt and the kitback. And of course, what happened was not quite as we planned it. The dirt stuck to the perspex, and poor horse was blinded. So while everyone else was wowing at Eratzi going one way, Showbrook and Leicester were going the other way. And so
I never thought I'd hear that about Eratzi. There you go.
And so I never really enjoyed it as much as everybody else did on the day.
But comparisons have been made, haven't they? I mean, when I got into racing, it was about a decade later. Everyone was saying, "Oh, he's Eratzi," when something would win by more than 5 lengths. And you have to go and look these things up.
It was an extraordinary performance, however you look at it. I mean, I always thought Arrogate winning the Dubai World Cup was not totally dissimilar. But in terms of because the prime American 2-year-old was there. He was second, and I'll remember his name quite soon, but not now. And he was, and I can see a big, tall Bertrando, big, tall, dark horse who was a pretty smart horse as well. And he just went by him. But the race was won as he come into the straight, which was so extraordinary. But that move on the turn was beyond mind-blowing.
Again, stuff of legends, Eratzi. Sad day, really, because everyone, it was such a great celebration, wasn't it, of what an equine thoroughbred can do.
Absolutely, but I mean, he did have a good long life. I mean, he must be past 30 if he's lived
32,
this
I
long.
think,
Right, I mean, for any racehorse, that's really... He's done well there. Yeah. I hope he had a long and happy retirement.
Well, absolutely. Never quite went the way like Frankel is now.
Well, it just shows you how difficult it is. Everyone says, "Oh, well, he's got to be a good horse, got to be a good stallion."
Doesn't always work out.
Is by Blushing Groom, fantastic family, outstanding racehorse, and yet very disappointing at stud.
There you go then. We all feel that one, don't we? A couple of big calls for you out there. 3 o'clock, let's go back to Esher then for the Coral Distaff. It is, of course, always an interesting race, this Pat Cooney. I'm going to get this out of the way. I thought Statement was the obvious one here. I was expecting Ryan to have a good day there.
Yeah, I think she was a little bit unlucky at Epsom last time out. I think she lost her shoe. If I had a gripe as well about big calls, I'd always like to know where they lost their shoe. Did they lose it a yard from the winning post or a yard out coming out the stalls? I'd like to know a little bit more. That's just another angry half-hour comment there, really. She's no bargain though, is she? Really, at 2-1. Yeah, she's got the form, group form as well. I'm just not thrilled at her price. I like everything about her, but her price. She is better than the Epsom run. I think it's an interesting opposition though. She's taken on Auntie Bridie, an interesting filly. There's William Haggis, ridden by Adam Farraher. Now, a lot of people might not know Adam who, but he's a good jockey from Cork. He's a young fella, rode a few winners in Ireland, talented rider. Big day for him riding in a listed race as well. My eye is drawn to Aurea of Andrew Baldwin. This girl, she's only had the 4 runs. I think she's progressive. Her best days are yet to come. She's going to have to step up. I think she's £12 behind Statement on official ratings. But I can see her running a decent race. As I say, Statement, I like everything about her, but her price.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't mind it. It was running about 2-1 with Bet365 when the market opened up, wasn't it? And of course, I'm expecting some compensation for the Lone Eagle camp. Teddy, have you looked at this?
Yeah, I sort of came into sort of Statement, but sort of rather weirdly on sort of process elimination. I feel that it wouldn't be. I don't think she's good value, but I couldn't find anything else I thought could beat her.
Yeah, it is one of those races, Chris, isn't it? Auntie Bridie, who Pat mentioned, they've had a lot of money for her, didn't they, out of Ireland, something that William's done for these connections before, but it is a bit of a leap of faith after what was a pretty tame return.
I mean, I'd be much more interested in the stablemate Ready to Venture. I mean, it's good luck to Adam Farraher, but he's a £5 claimer in a race where he can't claim, and that wouldn't be the purest way to gamble. Ready to Venture, I think, has still got some potential there. She was in the races like the Rockfell and so on when she won her maiden last year. And William Haggis obviously decided the smarter thing was to look after her and let her sort of progress a little bit more gently. I think you can make excuses for the races this year. She needed her first run at Ascot, still ran well. Soft ground at Goodwood was no help to her the next day. You could see her taking a step forward. And I think you can get sort of 15 to 2, 8 to 1. Whereas Statement, you're being asked to take a quarter of those odds about a horse who is in the same position of just being a maiden winner so far, and you're also having to make excuses.
I'm seeing the ball a little bit bigger, and I expect Ryan Moore to make a statement prior to the Eclipse. The big race preview for you. It's just the old Newton Cup, long established traditional handicap with some great finishes in this, which we saw last year. Pat, wide open, right?
Absolutely. I wouldn't even know what will go a favourite, never mind what will win it. It's been lively enough anti-post. Grand Bazaar of the Gosdens is just about favourite at the moment. Longsiders disputing favouritism. And this is, of course, a horse who didn't run in the Northumberland Plate. And it did look for a scary moment. There's a maximum field of 17. This horse just got into this race as well. So this is one of these Sir Mark Prescott horses. We all know he's probably going to be a lot better than his official mark, but he just about got in this race, so he's going to be a very interesting player. He's drawn 18, and a few people are saying, "Oh, he's got a terrible draw. He's a terrible draw." But some of these horses, they've won this old Newton Cup with terrible draws. Kelly's Dino won from stall 18 in 2014. Duragir won from 19. A Number Theory in 2012 won by 19. So there's no he's in the car park, he can't win in this race at all. So there's no edge there at all. It's just one of those tough looking handicaps. I thought Soto Sizzler for our good friend David Manuzzi might be the one. You'd have to rate him as undeniably unlucky at Epsom when he fell out the stalls. He had an awful lot to do. He got beat 2 lengths. He did got £4, which I think is a bit harsh, but with a level break, would he have won? I think he might have done. So on that basis, Soto Sizzler, I can see him running a big race, and he's in stall 9. But you might need a couple of darts to hit the bullseye with this one.
Oh, I agree, and you're right about the draw back. It's become something of a red herring on the round course at Haydock. The further we go up in distance and on soft ground, they tend to come round that tight right angle bend and then start charging, which is why I wanted to give another chance to the topically named My Frankel. Sir Michael Stout and Richard Kingscote. Forget the York run. It was just far too keen, did too much on what I like to call now the Illarab race at York at the Dante meeting. I think he's got a chance. Teddy?
I went with Midnight's Legacy. I always think that National Hunt Trainers horses, Alan King has a habit of winning these type of races. And I liked his profile. He did well. To be tuned up for Epsom, and I know the other horse may have been a bit unlucky, but I always think he might just still have the edge on him.
Alan King's certainly become one of the best dual-purpose trainers of our time, isn't he, Chris?
Definitely, and as long as he stays a dual-purpose trainer, I'm happy. He seems to keep edging more and more towards the flat racing.
A lot of ruminations about that, aren't there?
A bit uncomfortable for fans of jump racing like me. And I even see Venetia having runners on the flat these days. It's a terrible thing. Colin Tizard had a winner on the flat the other day. I mean, goodness.
He did. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And are you going with the Legacy or?
No, I was more tempted by Zabil Champion. I mean, there's a few of them about similar odds at the front of the market, and he's one. I mean, you've got to forgive one run, which was Royal Ascot on heavy ground, and I think he can cope with some give underfoot, but it was just that took his stamina away from him in the closing stages. He didn't quite make it, but I think it's obviously not going to be that testing. Haydock with a big field, you can sometimes work out as a sort of front runner's track, can't it? If they don't go too crazy in the early stages. I'm sure I can remember a Mark Johnson horse winning this from the front just a few years ago, and this might be another one.
Okay, it's very hard to see him out the frame. What do you like in the Old Newton Cup? Get your comments below. Group 1 time for you then, and it is finally we're here, the Eclipse. Now, again, these races, guys, at the start of the season, like, oh, look who's entered in this and who's entered in that. Lots has been said this week about whether we should have these early declarations, because we've got 4 runners turning up. Now, David Egan, who rides Mishrif, of course, who might just go off favourite, for the Gosden Gam, has said it's a boutique field. I thought it was one of the lines of the week. What do you make of this, Teddy?
Well, I think you always want to see Group 1's well contested. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because I'm a huge believer in the pattern, and I think it's important that in order to get a good rating on the international classifications, it's the first 4. So we're down. But actually, if you were choosing 3, you were choosing 3 of those 4, you would have had all these 3 in the race. Yeah. So I don't think from the terms of I always hate it when they say, oh well, we haven't got much quantity but we got a lot of quality. But I think that is the case here. No question. Yeah,
well, some of the highest rated horses in the world, of course, on turf. Adabe is the interesting one for everyone. Now a 7-year-old. And when we spoke to William Aggis on this show earlier in the season, it was interesting that William said, we're probably not going to go to Ascot this time, we're going to go for the Eclipse. And I said, William, it's usually run on good to firm. It's happy days, isn't it, for the 7-year-old, I think.
Yeah.
It was a remarkable story, again, Chris, that he went down under and did it. My worry about him in this is the tactical note. I can see him making the running. Tom Marquardt did that a bit down under. The headgear on, he needs to grind now, doesn't he?
I think he's comfortable on the front end, and I don't see any of the other 3 wanting to go forward, so it's pretty much going to have to be him. We could kind of do without the 4 of them sort of ambling for the first quarter mile, looking at each other, couldn't we? Hopefully the jockeys have a wee chat beforehand and figure out that what's going to happen. It's slightly unsatisfactory. I mean, I kind of wish that we could sort of put a pace car in there, just something that's purely in there to give them a tow. Mark's Basilica is the really interesting one for me, and there might even be a smidgen of, could you call it value at 13-8 in a hot race like this? 3-year-olds getting the weight allowance at this point of the summer, it's an advantage if they really are genuinely top class, and I think this one is.
Absolutely.
Slightly unusual campaigning for Aidan O'Brien, because you don't normally think of him as aiming at those French classics, but I think up to now he's been trying to avoid fast ground with this horse. The horse goes well with a bit of cut, and he's thinking, well, we've got other horses we can run in these races in Britain and Ireland, we'll send that one to France, and it's absolutely worked out, and I think he's benefited from it. You can see him getting more and more confident with each race. I thought the last win, it was a tactical race, but the way he's finished it out, I was quite taken with. And it's no surprise that he's Aidan's best 3-year-old, because after all, he did win the Dewhurst, didn't he? There's not much you can really fault him on during his career.
This is the one they need, Teddy, this year, isn't it? This is the jewel in the crown that they're desperate for among the colts. Anyway.
I've been a fan. I mean, I've been a fan, and I always thought he was slightly under the Ballydor radar, which sounds a bit odd for a horse who's won 3 Group 1s, and nicely as well. No, it wasn't. Who's a bit lucky there, and so. From that, I think Misriff, he's Prince Faisal, who owns him, is one of the great owner breeders, and takes a huge interest in all his horses, and certainly the joy he's given him when he won in Saudi and then came out and won in Dubai. I think he needs I always hate it being critical of really good horses, but I think he needs a bit of a run at it. You know, I think a good fast pace would suit him, and he probably isn't going to get that. He's coming off two Middle Eastern runs. There's sometimes a bounce factor there, but John has given him the time. But with Enable, he used the Eclipse as the sort of start-off point to the season. So there's a possibility that he might not be absolutely fully wound up.
I think you've summed him up really well. He'd be the one I'm against. I thought the one but like the small field is St Mark's Basilica.
Would I like to own him? Oh yes.
Absolutely. Another man that would like to own him, Pat Cooney. Will he go off favourite Mishriff? The tide has been going his way, I think.
Well, I agree with Teddy. I'd like to own as well. He's just looking. He's won £10 million in prize money. So if you could backdate that, that would be very agreeable. He's got to do it in the UK, really, hasn't he? I'm sort of, the jury's out with me about him. He's got the prize money. He's got the wins. I'm just not sure how good he is, really. You could say likewise about St Mark's Basilica, of course, but I don't think he gets the love that he deserves. His last three wins and runs have been Group 1 Dewhurst, Group 1 French Guineas, and then the Group 1 Derby. So he's the horse on the up. And of course, he's been doing all that on soft ground. He might be better on this bit better ground that we may well have at Sandown tomorrow. I lean towards St Mark's Basilica. I can definitely make a case for a Deeb making the running and getting a good tactical ride. Poor old El Drama, we haven't mentioned him, but it'd be safe to say he's really booked for fourth, wouldn't it? I'll go for St Mark's Basilica because I'm still not sure how good he is, but I know as a 3-year-old, he's improving.
Yeah, perhaps the best named horse ever if he won, I think, El Drama, wouldn't he? Of course. So is this a unanimous decision? St Mark's Basilica?
Marks, yeah.
The Majestic.
Sunk him.
Good luck if you're backing him. Time to bring in our friends at myracing.com. Check out their website for expert tips and analysis. They've got a massive Twitter following for good reason, and these doubles that they give us are very popular indeed, and they're seeing the ball big. It's a group race double this week. Alpinista in the Lancashire Oaks, keep it simple with her, and in the 335, the Eclipse, the big one, Mishriff. Let's give you some weekend winners then, and it's going to be a four-timer for you. Lord Grimthorpe, you can take the floor. Your best bet this weekend?
Well, best bet this weekend, St Mark's Basilica.
Absolutely. He's sensing a lot of confidence there, and a very good case made. Chris?
Atlas Bay in the sprint race.
With the drying ground.
The race will work out nicely, I think.
Yeah, he's a lovely little sprinter, isn't he? Absolutely. I'm going to stick with the show as well. I'm going to go in the old Newton Cup. I know it's wide open, but my Frankel, I'm pretty sure he's still a group horse in a handicap, that one. Bit of luck, please, Richard Kingscote. Away from the show, though, Pat Cooney. As ever, you've got one for us at Beverley.
Yes, up at Beverley, the 5'10", number 2, Super Proud, trained by William Haggis, ridden by Howard Cheng. Just watch her last run. She's been slow to get the hang of things, but she was 5th at Lingfield last time out. A real eye catcher. She got beat 3 1/4 lengths. She just strikes me as a filly who's rapidly getting to know what she should be doing. She's on the same handicap mark this time around, rated 66. Colours, one for the old timers in the silver buck colours. So easy to find. Watch her last run, an eye catcher, and I expect her to win tomorrow at Beverley.
There you go. Off to your members section go you. Up to Beverley then. There's your four-timer this weekend. Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's What a Shout. I mean, it feels like we've been here all morning, doesn't it? It has been a genuine pleasure, Teddy, to have you in. I hope that's reciprocated, of course.
Of course it is.
We're breaking new ground here, of course. It's been a lovely change of pace, Chris, isn't it? It really has. Thanks, Chris, for coming back in.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Teddy, so all those wonderful memories at Juddmonte, but you're not retiring, of course.
No, I'm going to stay in the business. There's plenty I've got to do, and plenty I'm involved in at the moment. Obviously, I'm still on the board at York. I'm deputy senior steward, and I'm talking to a few people about some projects going on. Actually, yeah.
Great to have you still around. You do look a little bit young to be retiring. I have to say so.
I'm far too young.
Commiserations for not retiring, but a fine sterling debut as a pundit, I can tell you that much. I'm sure our viewers agree. Pat Cooney, you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Nice to have a bit of culture on the show for a change, isn't it? And,
Your £10 is in the post.
There you go. Well, absolutely. He's not got any problems with that, let me tell you. Thank you for watching out there. Get your comments in. What did you make of the show? Again, who's your favourite Juddmonte horse? We love to read these comments. You can do that on YouTube, Facebook, of course, anything on Twitter, hashtag what a shout. All this weekend coming your way then. Good luck in the Eclipse wherever you're going. Don't forget to gamble responsibly, that's what it's all about. Don't forget to download the free must-have Racing Post app. You can do that on the App Store or the Google Play Store. So for myself, Dave Orton, it's some weekend ahead. Enjoy the sport.